introduce Ms. Indrani Malkani. She is a judicial member of the Lok Adalat for Maharashtra State Consumer Redressal Forum. She is a trustee of an NGO called We Citizens Action Network and is also the ALM Ward Coordinator of BMC D Ward and a trustee and honorary secretary of the Malabar Hills Residents Association. Ms. Malkani is the founder and secretary of Advanced Locality Management of Little Gibbs Roads and works in partnership with the BMC in all civic services related issues, particularly in solid waste management and disaster management. Ms. Malkani is known for her forthright views and high ethical standards and has been extensively involved with civic society issues. This is evident from a formidable set of interests and activities, from the waste collection and disposal activities to the model school bus system, to which she is a member of the government committee. At today's session, Ms. Malkani will deal specifically on Lok Adalat.
Good evening, friends. It is very daunting to be standing this evening and sharing, words in the presence of many technically savvy professionals, Sucheta, Mr. Shanbhag, Mr. Malcolm. However, as you will know, Lok Adalat is an informal, very informal sector. So therefore, I will speak to you in the layman's language to a great extent. All the more reason to thank you, Sucheta, for bringing this particular subject for discussion this evening. Okay, when we speak about Lok Adalat, by its very definition, it tells you that it is a people's court. And it is a system which is an alternate disputes resolution. And it has been developed in India, but the system exists all over the world. Now, India has a long history of resolving disputes through the mediation of village elders. And the idea of Lok Adalat, many of you may know, was mainly advocated by Justice P.N. Bhagwati, a former Chief Justice of India. However, the legality of Lok Adalat came about by the legal services. Let me see now, I have to do a little bit of juggling here. However, let me speak. The last point, it came about by the Legal Services Authorities Act 1987, which gave the statutory status to Lok Adalats pursuant to the constitutional mandate in Article 39A of the Constitution of India. And this contains all the various provisions for settlement of disputes through Lok Adalat. Now, what is the character of Lok Adalat? The character is non-adversarial system. And this is a court or a panel, and they are called Lok Adalats. They are held by the state authority. This slide does not say this, but I will share my thoughts with you. The state authority, district authority, Supreme Court Legal Services Committee, High Court Legal Services Committee, or Taluk Legal Services Committee. The state consumer commissions, the district consumer forums, and various tribunals. So in short, you will find Lok Adalats basically in all forum or all structured courts, and the other arm is the Lok Adalat of these courts. Now, the Lok Adalats are periodically held, exercising such jurisdiction as they determine, and they are usually presided over by retired judges, social activists, or other members of the legal profession. Now, what are the sort of cases or what are the sort of legal things that a Lok Adalat can deal with? The Lok Adalats can deal with all civil cases, matrimonial disputes, land disputes, partition, property dispute, labor dispute, and certainly everything related to consumers, and also compoundable criminal cases. Interestingly, the first Lok Adalat was held in 1985 in Delhi, where more than 150 cases were solved within a day. So when this system is used to its fullest extent, it has a lot of power to deal with the cases. My involvement, now My involvement with the Lok Adalat is through the State Consumer Redressal Commission. May I now ask, are you aware of the commission? I don't see one hand going up. Oh, there's 1, 2, 3. Okay. At the end of the day, each one of us is a consumer in many ways. So it is to our interest to know about the consumer courts and certainly about the State Consumer Redressal Commission of Maharashtra. It is the equivalent of the High Court in consumer-related matters. And I have been fortunate to be invited to be on the panel of the Lok Adalat, which I do pro bono. There is no fee that the bench takes, my 2 colleagues and myself. And every Friday, we have the Lok Adalat constituted at the State Redressal Commission. In fact, today was one of the hearings. It's from 2:30 to 5 o'clock. Now, the focus of Lok Adalat is completely on compromise. And when no compromise is reached, the matter goes back to regular court. However, if a compromise is reached, then an award is made and it is binding on both or all parties. And when I say all parties, I mean very often there are joint parties. So therefore, it is binding on all without any discrimination. Now, the beauty of Lok Adalat is that the disputing parties can plead their cases themselves in Lok Adalats. Indeed, even in other courts of law, a person can represent themselves. However, the Lok Adalat is of a more informal dialogue between the bench as well as the litigants or the parties. And it is not necessary to have advocates. Though in the consumer courts, in the consumer commission where I sit, the advocates are very much part of the proceedings, and I'm extremely happy to share with you that I've been member of the Lok Adalat since 2005, and over the years we have seen that normally the attitude of advocates, please excuse me if many of you are here, is certainly of a litigious nature. But when you come to a Lok Adalat, you have to come with the attitude of settlement, a compromise, and not with the idea of litigation. Now, this doesn't come naturally to advocates. So therefore, it is very gratifying to see that over the years, the advocates who sit with their clients are equally motivated and anxious to settle the matters. So, which is a very good indication. I can only speak so from on the forum that I sit, but I'm hoping that such an attitude would be seen in the other Lok Adalats as well. Now, in the Lok Adalat, the procedure is very simple, and it is shorn of almost all legal formalism and rituals. Even witnesses are not called. So basically, when the matter is projected, no doubt the members do talk about the merits of the case, but that is only with the idea of understanding the case. Because when you are mediating or you are discussing the matter, one must be conversant with what started it in the first place and how it is to be resolved. Now, these disputes can come to a Lok Adalat directly instead of the regular court also. So therefore, it can be at a litigation stage, it could be pre-litigation or even post-litigation. Now, when I say post-litigation, it means that whilst there are many case times, and I have seen that there are matters that come to us in the Lok Adalat which is of 14, 15 years. And usually, I think later on, or maybe you can ask questions as to why is it there's such a phenomena of the cases that we handle are nearly 70% related to builders. So now, is it a Mumbai phenomena? I do not know, I presume so. So imagine that when a case has been going on for 14 years, which is related to your home or the lack thereof, then how important it is to find the light at the end of the tunnel. So there are many such cases which come, and therefore when we allow sharing a little bit of how the emotion that comes through to the bench, that people are very emotional and when they come, because the first time they meet the panel, they are full of fight because an injustice has been committed, perceived or otherwise, to one of the parties. So this emotion needs to be channelized, this emotion needs to be harnessed, and a dialogue has to emerge. Now, unless that emerges, you can't really have a settlement or a compromise. And sometimes it is seen that, and this is more so, prevalent, or it's noticed in consumer-related affairs as well as in accident tribunals, because the dispute is usually for the quantum of money. And when there is a money, like in compensation, because consumer courts are all about compensation, and so is the accident tribunal. So in Lok Adalat, this is a small thing, but it helps tremendously, because when a litigation is to do with money, there cannot also be an appeal, because when you have a settlement, it's because two parties have agreed. So that is the beauty of Lok Adalat. And when you start this process of the dialogue, both parties, as I said, there is a lot of emotion, but obviously, at least that is what we see in the consumer forum, in the consumer Lok Adalat, is that the advocates somehow have been able to get their clients to agree to go to the Lok Adalat to try and see if a settlement is possible. Now, first, that is the first step. Let's put it, that's the baby step. Then we start the dialogue. So we allow the people to talk and vent their emotion to a great extent, but of course, when it goes out of hand, we do stop it. But it is necessary for this emotion to be channelized and to come out, because if it doesn't, you are not going to be in a frame of mind to settle or compromise an issue. So as a Lok Adalat's jurisdiction, any matter that is pending before a particular court can come, and the Lok Adalat is authorized to deal with it. Now, it could be civil, as I mentioned before. Sorry, I think, how did that happen? Sorry. So it could be criminal or it could be civil. Now, the other point that we need to know is that Lok Adalat can take cognizance of matters involving not only those persons who are entitled to avail free legal services, but all of the other persons also, be there be women, men, children, and even institutions. So everyone can approach a Lok Adalat. And anyone or more of the parties to a dispute can move an application to the court where their matter may be pending. As I mentioned earlier, even pre-litigative stage, for such matters to be taken up in Lok Adalat. And the Lok Adalat bench can then take it up to its logical conclusion. Now, the award that is passed by the Lok Adalat is that it has as much a force as a decree of a civil court which is obtained after due contest. Now, very often it has been thought that is the award which has been given at a Lok Adalat, is it in a state of finality, or can you appeal against an order given by the Lok Adalat? And some people have tried to challenge it on several grounds, the exception being in the Lok Adalat of the Consumer Commissions, and that I can share with you because since I'm there. Now, to put the matter to rest, you cannot appeal against the order of the Lok Adalat. In one of the recent decisions, the Supreme Court of India has once again laid to rest all such doubts. In unequivocal terms, the court has held that the award of the Lok Adalat is as good as the decree of a court. The award of the Lok Adalat is fictionally deemed to be decrees of court, and therefore the courts have all the power in relation thereto as it has in relation to a decree passed by itself. sometimes you have to use the legal words. I see my colleagues are sitting here, so that gives a little bit of depth. People don't take it very seriously if it is that informal. Now, what are the things that we need to see is that in the Lok Adalat cannot force the parties to settle. So those of us who are on the bench of a particular Lok Adalat are also taught the art of mediating. Because whilst we are discussing and trying to get the parties to agree to a settlement, it has to be borne in mind that we are not there to impose our will on the parties. So that, because there is an informal dialogue, so it is imperative, because any one of you may tomorrow be invited for a Lok Adalat, because there's a social worker who's also invited. I am there in that capacity. So therefore, it is correct to note that the Lok Adalat cannot impose the consent. So the consent has to be arrived at by both parties. Now, the Supreme Court has also held that compromise implies some element of accommodation on each side, and it is not a total surrender. And that is something which we take to be our guiding principle when we start to convince the two parties to come to a settlement. Now, what is a compromise? A compromise is always bilateral and means mutual adjustment, some give and take. It can't be all give and all take. And settlement is the termination of legal proceedings by mutual consent, and if no compromise or settlement is or could be arrived at, no order can be passed by the Lok Adalat. What happens in such a case? That particular case is reverted to the regular court and the litigation will proceed. Now, what are the benefits which you derived by going through the Lok Adalat? No. Where's the benefits? I must have. Yeah. Okay. Right. So let me list some of the benefits. Some are mentioned here. I think 2, 3 are mentioned here. First of all, there is no court fee. That should bring cheer that you're not spending money. And if it is filed in regular court, the money is refunded after the dispute is settled in Lok Adalat. Secondly, there is no strict application of procedural laws and Evidence Act. Now, that going into a little bit of discussion on the Evidence Act, you will come across that there are a whole lot of archaic provisions there, which is not very consumer friendly or citizen friendly. So that is not applicable here, while we are assessing the merits of the claim in the Lok Adalat. The parties to the disputes, though represented by their advocates, can interact with the Lok Adalat. And mind you, at a Lok Adalat, it is expected that the panel will sit at the same level as the litigants. So automatically, it brings about a equality of understanding between the bench and the parties, which is not possible in a regular court of law. Thirdly, disputes can be brought before the Lok Adalat directly instead of going to a regular court first and then to Lok Adalat. Though by practice, it's the other way around, because invariably the first process a person thinks of is how to litigate, that I have to go for litigation. Rarely, as by show of hands, it proves that people don't know about the system of Lok Adalat, so therefore this is highly unused or underutilized form of redressal. Fourthly, the decision of the Lok Adalat is binding on the parties to the dispute, and its order is capable of execution through legal process. No appeal, as I mentioned earlier, lies against the order of the Lok Adalat, whereas in the regular law courts, there is always a scope to appeal to the higher forum on the decision of the trial court, which in turn causes enormous delays and monetary loss. Now, last but not the least, it is a faster and an inexpensive remedy with legal status. Normally in a Lok Adalat, we are not inclined to give adjournments because parties do ask for. A reasonable number of time is given, like hearings are given, so that they can gather whatever it is and you allow the settlement to take place. Now the actual procedure is that after all this discussion, there is a consent form which states very clearly the parties' names, the terms of settlement, consent, etc. So, and then that is signed by the members, which is binding on both parties, and an official decree, at least in the Consumer Redressal Commission, a final order is given by the President of the Commission. Now, as I mentioned earlier, that this system of using Lok Adalat, in the consumer part I'm speaking about, mind you, this Lok Adalat is not just at the state level. All the district forum of the Consumer Redressal Commissions, the forum, they all have their individual Lok Adalats. So imagine, normally what happens, you have filed a case, I am speaking particularly in the under the Consumer Protection Act. When you file a complaint or you file a case, you have to do so at the place where the action has been caused. That is, wherever you have been grieved. So therefore, you need to go to that place to file it. Now again, if you have to keep appealing and land up at the state level, imagine how much money, effort, and everything has been spent. But to have a Lok Adalat at the forum where you have made your litigation and you are able to deal with it at that level itself in the Lok Adalat saves you all the bother. So therefore, using it is in great ways advantageous to all of us. So the scheme also allows the overburdened courts to shed a lot of their baggage. Now we have been speaking to find out that if preventive measures, in paper we can write a lot of things. So we say that pre-litigation you can file in Lok Adalat, but in practice it does not happen. So in the State Consumer Redressal Commission, the present president is Justice Chavan, who is not a retired judge but has been transferred from the High Court, Bombay High Court. And he is extremely keen that we do preventive cases, that preventive measure. Therefore, before the litigation can begin, it is to be sent to Lok Adalat. Now, under those circumstances, you haven't gone through the acrimony of litigation, so the courts also will be less burdened. And here's the punchline. 90% of the cases in developed countries do not reach a litigation stage because the mediation there is very, very popular. In our case, with the ratio of judges to the litigations, it is a mammoth task. So the use of Lok Adalat is the call of the day. And in this context, I have been advised by Mr. Shanbhag that the Maha Lok Adalat, which is held across the country, by the way, on a particular day, that should any one of you have litigations, do use it for 12th of April in your various courts and ask for your case to be transferred to the Lok Adalat bench, but you need to do that by 31st of March, whilst you're also signing off your financial year. So it would be to your advantage should you be so unlucky as to have litigations in court. I have also been told, or it is proposed, that in relation to deemed conveyance, which is a great problem in Mumbai city, that now the collector, by constituting Lok Adalats, will be taking up these matters. Unfortunately, I don't have much knowledge about how that is being constituted, etc. So therefore, we'll have to wait and see how the government deals with it. But this much I can tell you, much as we are propagating the Lok Adalats, the government is sorely inclined not to make the infrastructure available to the courts and to the Lok Adalats. So, that is one thing that maybe all of us need to ask for more Lok Adalats and its own functioning. Here are some statistics which just for your own interest. And some of the places where the bench has been conducting Lok Adalats. But as I told you, that every court is supposed to have a section of the Lok Adalat. I hope I have been able to share a few things with you, and I'll be happy to be of any assistance in future. Thank you so much for your time.